Assalamu alaikum, my dear students. This is Shaila Akhtar, Assistant Professor English. This class is prepared for the students of Master's final year, and the topic of our today's class is use of soliloquies in Hamlet from the course William Shakespeare. At the very beginning of our class, let's know what soliloquy is and what is its function in a play. So if we want to define soliloquy, we can say that soliloquy is an act of speaking one's thoughts aloud when by oneself or regardless of any hearers, especially by a character in a play. So that means in a play, whenever a specific character speaks his or her dialogue aloud by oneself and the others cannot hear it, but it is conveying information to the audience. So this is soliloquy. Soliloquy reveals the inner mind of a character and it throws light on other characters through the speaker's opinion. And soliloquy tells of events which have happened off the stage and contributes to the development of the plot. Okay, my dear students, now let's start reading from the soliloquies. And the first soliloquy we get from Act 1, Scene 2, and it begins from line 129 to and it ends at the line 159. The first soliloquy is the most important of all for offering a clear understanding of Hamlet's character, and it takes place after the king and the queen have commented on his brooding melancholy over the death of his father. They ask Hamlet to cast off his deep melancholy, and Hamlet, in his soliloquy, gives vent to his grief that was in his heart for quite a long time. And this soliloquy begins saying like that, "Let me not think on it, frailty, thy name is women." So here Hamlet is mourning the death of his father and he deplores his mother's character. Not even 2 months have passed, and even before those shoes were old with which she followed his poor father's body, and she has married a man who is much inferior to her old husband, and her over hasty marriage is considered as an incestuous affair, makes him believe that women are weak and they are, and Hamlet generalizes women, calling them frailty, thy name is women. So this most wicked speed of his mother plunges him into a mood of deep depression and loathsome disgust with the world and the affairs of the world. And now the lines are followed. There is a little month or ere those shoes were old, with which she followed my poor father's body. And now, in this same soliloquy, Hamlet says, "How weary, stale, flat, and uncomfortable seem to me all the uses of this world." Now, he compares the world to an unweeded garden, and in which rank and gross things grow in abundance. So he no longer wishes to live in such a world and wishes to have his two to solid flesh melt into dew. That means he wants death. And he wishes that if only God had not set his canon against self-slaughter, he would commit suicide and he could have killed himself to get rid of this grief and to get rid of this wicked world. And this dialogue throws light on the character of Hamlet's dead father, who was an affectionate husband and an excellent king. But Hamlet's attachment towards his dead father is also revealed, and Hamlet's reference to mythological characters portray him a well-versed man in classical literature, and the first soliloquy itself paints a vivid picture of Hamlet's character, which would account for his tragedy. And his generalization, world weariness, apathy, disgust with life, all appear again and again in his soliloquies. Now the second soliloquy, and we find this soliloquy in Act 1, Scene 5, from line number 92 to 112. In this soliloquy, we here find the consequence of Hamlet's meeting with the ghost, and it expresses the rude shock he has sustained. So here, the very beginning of the soliloquy: "Oh, all you hosts of heaven, O earth, what else? And shall I couple hell, O fie, hold my heart." So here, Hamlet actually reveals that the ghost reveals the truth about Claudius murdering his brother and the inconstancy and treacherous nature of Gertrude. And Hamlet is filled with disgust and he wants to take revenge immediately. And he calls upon the angels of heaven to help. He acts he wants his emotion to cool down, and at the same time he wants his emotion to act immediately and avenge the culprit. So in this situation, the ghost has not only made shocking revelation but has also imposed upon him the duty of avenging his father's death, and Hamlet determines to wipe out all other thoughts from his mind and to preserve only the ghost's commandment, and he deplores the villainous nature of Claudius as smiling damned villain, and the inconsistency of Gertrude as most pernicious woman. So here Hamlet reveals the two persons, his mother and his uncle: "O most pernicious woman, the Gertrude, and O villain, smiling damned villain." That means the uncle, the present king. So Hamlet's determination to remember only the ghost's word create an impression of active and ambitious Hamlet, but we are only deceived by his words, for the more he thinks, the less capable he becomes of direct action. And here we see the thinker, the pure young man to whom villainy is worldly affairs, is a strange phenomena, and his soliloquy introduces the element of revenge for the first time. Now the third soliloquy, and we can find it in Act 2, Scene 2, from line number 543 to 601. And at the very beginning of the soliloquy, Hamlet says, "Age, So, goodbye to you. Now I'm alone. Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I. Is it not monstrous that this player here, but in a fiction, in a dream of passion? Here, Hamlet welcomes the town players and arranges the performance of the play The Murder of Gonjago to confirm the ghost's words. And when everybody leaves, Hamlet is left alone. He sinks into the soliloquy where he condemns himself as a rogue and peasant slave for his inaction. And a fabulous story would subject the actor to emotions conjured up through imagination, and his face becomes pale, tears come to his eyes, and his voice breaks with sobs. Frenzy possesses his looks. So Hamlet, with the real tragedy of his father's death, is emotionless and inactive like a dreamer. So he has not done anything so far to take revenge. And here Hamlet accuses himself for his delay in executing the ghost's order. So no one can be more harsh on Hamlet on the subject of neglecting his duty than Hamlet himself. And having seen the emotion which the players can put forth about the death of Priam, a mere figure from the Greek legend of many centuries past, he cannot but ask himself what emotion the players would have expressed had they like him. Now, he regards himself as a dull and muddy, mettled rascal and a rogue and peasant slave because he has done nothing to avenge his father's death. And he calls himself a coward and declares that he should act or not. Like a whore, unpack my heart with words and fall a cursing like a very drab. And he fills his anger with wicked thoughts of his uncle as a bloody, bawdy villain, remorseless, treacherous, lecherous, kindless villain. So that he could execute the vengeance immediately. And at the end of the soliloquy, we see him planning to enact the mousetrap play to catch the conscience of the king. And in the middle of the soliloquy, Hamlet tells, they have proclaimed their malefactions. For murder, though it have no tongue, will speak with most miraculous organ. And through these lines, Hamlet wants to say that at once confessed their crimes, that means the uncle, the murderer. So true it is that, however carefully he may conceal his guilt, it will be discovered at last in a most marvelous manner, with most miraculous organ. That means in a most marvelous manner. So, in this soliloquy, actually emphasizes Hamlet's speculating and inactive nature, and it reveals his self-contempt, but his disgust only leads to his inaction. Now the fourth soliloquy from Act 3, Scene 1. This is the most celebrated of soliloquies and occurs at the beginning of the nunnery scene. Hamlet again reverts to the thought of suicide, and Hamlet is torn within his mind. He does not know which he should choose, whether silently to suffer the cruelties of fate or to fight against the misfortunes of life. And he reflects on the mysteries of life and death. At the beginning of this soliloquy, Hamlet utters, to be or not to be, that is the question, whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune or to take arms against a sea of troubles. So here King Claudius and Polonius plan to spy on Hamlet's madness during the arranged meeting between Hamlet and Ophelia, and hearing his footsteps both of them hide behind the arras. Now Hamlet enters and meditates on his present inactive nature. His present question and problem is whether it is nobler to live a miserable, inactive life or to end one's life in the fight against misfortune. And death, which is the eternal sleep, will put an end to all the sorrows and sufferings one experiences in his world. So it is an end which everyone wishes to have, but who knows what will happen after that. So we may have horrible dreams during that sleep, and it is this fear that makes us endure the present life and prevents us from committing suicide. And now comes the next utterance, and thus the native hue of resolution is speckled over with the pale cast of thought. Here the known bad it is not so terrifying as the unknown. So the fear of this thought makes men cowards, and this native hue of resolution actually is the pale cast of thought. So this soliloquy constitutes one of the finest poetic passages and a masterpiece that reveals the universal fear of death. And spoken in a moment of deception and despair, this soliloquy gives us an insight into the character of Hamlet, and it reveals Hamlet's cynicism, his melancholy, his irresolution, and partly his conscience to avoid a controversy, and his scrupulous nature. It shows his speculative mind and his incapability for any pre-planned action, and it emphasizes his delay and to some extent shows the mental torture he is undergoing due to his incapacity of doing anything. Now the fifth soliloquy from Act 3, Scene 2, and in between the lines of 379 to 390. In this soliloquy, we have the pictures like this. Polonius informs Hamlet about his mother's wish to speak to him, and he accepts the invitation and requests everybody to leave him alone and enters into his meditation. He wonders how he would act with her, and Hamlet says that at the dead hour of night the witches practice their enchantments, the graves open and the evil spirits come out, hell itself lets off vapors that are poisonous to the people of the world. So this is the best time for Hamlet also to do evil acts, which the day will tremble to witness. So he wants to act. In this situation, he utters, O heart, lose not thy nature, let not ever the soul of Nero enters this firm bosom. Let me be cruel, not unnatural. That means now he wants to act, that means he wants to kill his mother, but then he calms down and requests his heart to be soft in its dealings towards his mother. He should not lose temper and act like Nero, because the Roman Emperor Nero murdered his mother. Now he wishes such feelings should not enter his heart. But at the same time he wants to be cruel in his words just to awaken her conscience. That means his mother's conscience. And he would use harsh words which are daggers to her conscience, but he will not use a real dagger to kill her. Now Hamlet utters, How in my words somever she be sent, to give them seals never my soul consents. So now he is trying to tell that he wants her own conscience to kill her from evil deeds, and so his tongue and soul will act contrary to each other and become hypocrites. Thus he concludes his soliloquy saying that he would rebuke her with words, for words are mightier than swords. But he does not want to act upon the words because they are stronger than the swords. So when Hamlet is about to meet his mother, he speaks of this soliloquy, and but he determines to speak daggers to her and wishes his tongue and soul in this be hypocrites, and in that he will not use any daggers. And this soliloquy throws light on Hamlet's refinement of nature and respect for his father's coarse words and his love for his mother. Now the sixth soliloquy from Act 3, Scene 3, in between the line of 73 to 96, and the soliloquy begins with this uttering, "Now might I do it, Pat, now he is praying, and now I will do it," and so he goes to heaven. Actually, after a battle, to give up evil deeds or to fight till the end in his mind, Claudius kneels down to pray, and Hamlet enters and, seeing him at prayers, hesitates to act, and bound by his morality. And he thinks that if he kills Claudius at this moment, when he is at prayer, his soul would go to heaven. Because this thought of Hamlet is Christian, if a soul repents for its sin at the time of death, it goes to heaven. And Hamlet does not want his uncle's soul to go to heaven, for he is the most wretched human being. And this soliloquy occurs on the way to meet his mother in the closet, and he sees the king at prayer and gets an opportunity to kill him, and an opportunity for which he has been longing so far, and yet he does not act. And just at this moment when he should act, he begins to think, and Claudius killed his father without even giving him any time to pray or repent for his sins, and he must be paying the divine penalty for his deeds and sins. So Hamlet should also kill Claudius, not while he is doing a good act like praying, which would send him to heaven, but when he indulges in some evil deeds, like when he is drunk asleep, or in his race, or in the incestuous pleasure of his bed, at a game, at swearing, or about some act that has no relish of salvation in it. So, such is his reasoning, and this reasoning is now generally recognized as an unconscious excuse for delay, for his reasoning sounds unconvincing, and this soliloquy emphasizes his delay and procrastinating nature, and this soliloquy forms the crisis of the play. Now the seventh soliloquy from Act 4 and Scene 4, and the lines are from 32 to 66. After Hamlet's meeting with the Norwegian army captain in a plain in Denmark, Hamlet enters into a soliloquy where he thinks over his inactive nature and finds cause to act immediately. In this, he contrasts himself with Fortinbras, and he says that to be great in the right sense, one should not engage in any quarrel without any genuine cause. But when honor is at stake, even even a simple cause may justify a quarrel, for honor is the greatest of all. Hamlet's failure to seize the occasion and put an end to Claudius leads us on to this final soliloquy by a gradual process. And from his talk with the captain, Hamlet comes to know that young Fortinbras is prepared to risk his life and the lives of his 20,000 soldiers for the sake of his honor. And this nature of Fortinbras again stirs up his revenge motive, and his conscience pricks him, as it does often. And when young Fortinbras does all these things for the sake of honor, now Hamlet thinks, why has he not done anything when he has cause and will and strength and means to do it? Now he tries to find out the cause for his delay, saying that whether it be bestial oblivion or some craven scruple of thinking too precisely on the event. He thinks over the purpose of man's creation by God. If the aim of man is to sleep and feed, he considers them not more than a beast. And he realizes finally that God has not endowed us with such capability and godlike reason to fused in us unused. And he determines, from this time forth, my thoughts be bloody or be nothing forth. That means, in spite of his determination, we see him inactive until the enemy takes the initiative. And this soliloquy emphasizes his irresolution and procrastination also. And what Hamlet philosophizes in this soliloquy are universal truths, and it strengthens his generalizing nature. And his conscience pricks him and urges him to execute the revenge. The nature, the natural deficiency in him prevents him from prompt action. So, my thoughts be bloody or be nothing oath. It is the oath saying and oath feeling for him. Now, some points to be noted. These soliloquies reveal the hero, that means Hamlet's character, and nowhere it seems artificial or out of place throughout the play. At every place it is necessary and inevitable. Without these soliloquies, Hamlet is a character without personality, and he would become an elusive shadow. And these soliloquies let the audience know the next step of the play, and the fate of the kingdom depends on Hamlet, so he cannot accept the revenger's ethic without thinking. So, as we know, Shakespearean tragedy is cathartic and depicts the suffering and misfortunes of the hero in an exceptional way to produce in the spectators' hearts the feeling of pity, sympathy, wonder, and fear. And Shakespearean tragedy is essentially the story of one man and depicts his suffering and misfortune leading to his death. And Hamlet deals with the tragedy of one man also, that means Hamlet, the Prince of Denmark, and he is popular among the people and is regarded as the beloved of the distracted multitude. He is a noble man, and in his thoughts and dealings he is noble also, and he has a sensitive conscience which prevents him from doing evil deeds. So This was Hamlet, and this was some revelation about the soliloquies uttered by Hamlet, the central character throughout the play. So, my dear students, this is all for today. We will be together again very soon. Till then, stay home, stay safe. Thank you.